needed to know about this primary. And then I discovered, I guess, that Romney has a new debate coach whose specialty is to say as many untrue things as fast as you can to get them all into one or two quick statements. So I thought it was kind of wild, but I am thrilled to be here. I can describe and explain my candidacy with three simple questions. How many of you believe that the United States is seriously on the wrong track? How many of you believe that in addition to changing the White House, we have to change the way Congress behaves, the bureaucracy behaves, the courts behave, that it's bigger than Obama, that while he's the start, there's a lot more to getting America back on the right track than just Obama? And how many of you believe that even if we win the election, that the left and the established forces will fight us every single day to try to stop us from changing things? That's why I'm running. Because we need somebody who's prepared to develop a team that actually changes where the country's going and actually changes how Washington works. I always ask audiences to be with me, not for me. And I tell them, if you say you're for me, you're going to vote, go home and say, I sure hope Newt fixes it. And what I just described to you is too big for one person, even the president, to fix. So I need you to be with me for the next 8 years so that we can go out side by side, remind the Congress every day what we're doing, remind the governor, the state legislature, the county commission, the city council, the school board. If you really want to get America back on the right track, it is a whole wave effect that unleashes the American people to rebuild the American dream. And that wave effect has to be at every level. So this is a big undertaking. As I said last night in the debate, I find this very sobering to think about the scale of the challenge we face. This isn't just fun and games. This isn't like a high school class presidency. This is trying to get the most powerful, complex country in the world back doing the right things the right way. I think there are three primary projects we have. The first is economic. How do we create jobs? How do we get housing prices back up? How do we get economic growth in the right way so we rebuild manufacturing so we're capable of being the arsenal of democracy? And in that process, how do we balance the budget? How do we return power back home through the 10th Amendment? So we end up with a smaller, less intrusive federal government doing the things it constitutionally should do and doing it within a balanced budget. That's the first big challenge. And the gap between where Obama would go and where we would go is about as wide as the Pacific Ocean. He represents a big government, Saul Alinsky, radical vision of an American future in which government's in control and we are merely subjects. The second big difference is the very nature of America. I believe in American exceptionalism. And American exceptionalism doesn't mean you and I are exceptional, we're just normal people. But it means that this system that we've inherited from the Founding Fathers is truly exceptional. And it starts with the Declaration of Independence. And it starts with the idea that we have been endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, this is central to defining America. We're the only country in history that says power comes from God to each one of you personally. You are personally sovereign. And those rights are unalienable, which means that no government can come between you and God. So no bureaucrat, no judge, no president can come between you and God. Which is why, since you're sovereign, we begin our Constitution, we the people. We don't say we the politicians, we the bureaucrats, we the judges. We say we the people. Because in America, you are always a citizen, and the government should be your servant, not the other way around. Now, that is exactly the opposite of the Obama left-wing vision, which is that government is smart and people are dumb. Government should be big and people should be small. And you translate the combination of economics and the difference in our two value systems in a very simple way. When I worked with President Reagan, We adopted a lower tax, less regulation, more American energy policy, and it led to 16 million new jobs. Then after Reagan left, there were 2 tax increases, one by a Republican, one by a Democrat. The economy stagnated. When I became Speaker, we went back to Reaganism. We reformed welfare. 2 out of 3 people went to work or went to school. We had the first tax cut in 16 years and the largest capital gains tax cut in history. We ended up in a situation where we had 4.2% unemployment because 11 million Americans went back to work while I was Speaker. Now, in that setting, we balanced the budget, and the bill we passed in 1997, the Balanced Budget Act, led to 4 consecutive balanced budgets. In that setting, I think it's fair to say that I'm in favor of jobs and paychecks. So I would like to run a campaign this fall in which we have a job and paycheck candidate versus a dependency and food stamp candidate.
Yeah!
The fact is, President Obama has been the best food stamp president in American history. And I don't believe there's any neighborhood in America where if you went and saw the parents and said, would you rather your children were dependent on the government and got food stamps the rest of their life, or were independent of the government and had a job and got paychecks the rest of their life? I think in every neighborhood of every background, a majority will pick paychecks over food stamps, and that'll be a central decision point. The third area, if the first area is economics and the second area is American exceptionalism versus radicalism, the third area is national security and foreign policy. And it's really simple. I believe we live in a dangerous world. I believe there are people who would like to kill us or destroy our civilization. I believe the way you design a defense budget is you start with who your enemies are. You figure out what it takes to stop them. And then you design your defense budget around making sure we're safe. And that tells you the budget you need. Obama lives in a fantasy land. He has no notion how complicated the world is. He has no ability to deal with how hard the problems are. You see this every day. Sunday a week ago, Saudi Arabia signed a contract with China to develop nuclear power in Saudi Arabia as a first step towards nuclear weapons to balance off Iran. Why did they pick China? Because they don't trust President Obama. This last week, the president vetoed the Keystone Pipeline, which would have taken Canadian oil to Houston, Texas. So you would have had 20 to 50,000 jobs building the pipeline. You would have had 30 to 50 years of processing the oil at Houston. The port of Houston and Galveston would have made money shipping the oil. All of that was possible. The president basically bowed to some left-wing extremists in San Francisco, stopped the pipeline, and apparently didn't realize that the Canadians always have the option of getting Chinese funding to build a pipeline across the Canadian Rockies to Vancouver, so there'd be no American jobs, no American energy, no American construction. And imagine an American president who would make a Chinese-Canadian partnership more desirable than working with the United States. I mean, that's how bad this is. When you look south of here, it's very clear that Chavez in Venezuela is aligning himself with the Iranians, and it's very clear that the Iranians are trying to build a base in Latin America so that they can threaten us from nearby, just as the Soviet Union once did. It's very clear that the Obama administration approach to the Castro regime is about as effective as his approach to the Iranians, meaning it will fail totally. So you have no realistic policy there. Finally, the Iranians go out and they practice closing the Straits of Hormuz, through which passes a sixth of all the oil in the world. They are being overtly provocative. And the president's reaction is to cancel a military exercise with the Israelis so we don't provoke the Iranians. Well, now, are you suggesting you mean that the American president who refused to allow American oil to be developed offshore, when he went to Brazil and he praised the Brazilians for developing oil offshore, and he told them how glad he was he could guarantee $2 billion in loans so they could buy equipment from a company George Soros owned? You're suggesting that's all a connection.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting. to all of you, the weirdest part of the Brazilian trip is when the president says to the Brazilians, I want the United States to be your best customer. Now think about this. The Obama economic model is you borrow from the Chinese to pay the Brazilians. Now I think we don't hire the American president to go around the world as a purchasing agent for foreign governments. I think we hire the American president to go around the world as a salesman of American goods and services. And I also say there's something very suspicious about the Obama administration deciding to buy its next training aircraft for the Air Force from the Brazilians instead of from a firm in Wichita, Kansas. And this is, I think, something that has to be very thoroughly investigated because there's no reason to move jobs from Wichita, Kansas to Brazil for American aircraft and for American purchase. So I think that's another example of what we're talking about. Now, let me also say that I think there are very directly Florida-oriented questions. I want to run as a team. To run as a team, I need your help. We need to pick up the House seats. We need to pick up Senate seats. So we need to beat Bill Nelson this year. We have a When we win control of the Senate and we increase our size in the House, I will ask the House to stay in session on January 3rd, House and Senate to stay in session on January 3rd. They get sworn in, brand new Congress. I'll ask them to stay in session and have 3 bills before I'm sworn in on January 20th. One, I will ask them to repeal Obamacare. Two, I will ask them to repeal Dodd-Frank, which is killing small banks. People in Washington don't realize that Dodd-Frank has driven down the price of housing, made it harder to get housing loans, is killing small banks, and is killing loans to small business. It's a major impediment to economic recovery. And third, I asked them to repeal Sarbanes-Oxley so that we are in a position to sign all 3 bills the day I'm sworn in, which will start the process the right way. On the first day, about 2 hours after the inaugural address, I will sign a series of executive orders. The first executive order will eliminate all of the White House czars as sign an executive order that day instructing the State Department to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to indicate our unequivocal support for Israel. And you can actually go to newt.org and submit your ideas for possible executive orders. One will, for example, stop all federal efforts on behalf of Agenda 21, a United Nations project. And our goal would be, by the time President Obama lands in Chicago, to have dismantled about 40% of his government that afternoon. She wants her hometown back, Chicago. I may be able to change Washington. I ain't going to promise you that I'm able to change Chicago. There are limits to my ability to wave a magic wand here. But I'll encourage you to try to take your hometown back. We'll get the country back and Chicago will follow. How's that sound? Look, I need your help between now and next Tuesday. The fact is, Governor Romney will have vastly more money than I will, but we'll have many more people than he will. This is exactly what happened in South Carolina, and people power beats money power every time. We can make a very simple case. As governor of Massachusetts, he was pro-abortion, pro-gay rights, pro-tax increase, and pro-gun control. Now, that makes him a moderate in Massachusetts, but it makes him pretty liberal in a Republican primary. which probably explains why you hired Charlie Crist staff.
That was a real mistake.
The division's real clear. You can't have a debate between Obamacare and Romney Care because they're too close together. You can have a debate between a Reagan conservative and Obamacare because we're that far apart. The same thing's true with tax increases. The governor raised taxes and his state ranked 47th in job creation. I helped cut taxes every single time. I fought every major tax increase in my career, and I helped with job creation. So I'm delighted to debate Barack Obama on what creates jobs and how to create jobs. So I will, when I come back, with your help, if you'll help me win next Tuesday, I will become the Republican nominee. When I come back in August to Tampa, I will challenge the president to 7 3-hour debates. The Lincoln Douglas tradition with a timekeeper but no moderator. I will concede in advance that he can use a teleprompter. After all, if you had to defend Obamacare, wouldn't you want to use a teleprompter? There's fairness involved here. Now, people think it's going to be really hard to get him to debate. I don't think so. When Lincoln announced in 1858, he'd been out of office for 10 years, and Douglas was the best-known senator and assumed to be the next president. And Lincoln, when he announced, said, look, there are 105 days left. Why don't we debate every day? And Douglas said, I don't think so. So Lincoln adopted a policy. Wherever Douglas went, Lincoln would go the next day and would answer Douglas's speech. And about 3 weeks into it, Douglas figured out that the news coverage was always Lincoln's answer, not Douglas's speech. So I will announce in Tampa in August, if the president has not yet accepted